Hello, hello. Today I want to talk about how pleasure and pain are sort of deep psychological teachers on how we are to orient in life, on the things we ought to pursue and avoid. And I really want to call people's attention to introspect on the way in which, pleasure and pain manifest in their life. What sort of things, you know, arise these feelings, because they are sort of deep feelings and deep emotions that, pervade through all of our life. And I think it's important to become connected to them, to pay close attention to them because they convey important information, really. And we shouldn't ignore that information. People often have a kind of tendency to repress and ignore, particularly pain, and also a tendency to pursue pleasure in the wrong kind of places, which leads to a kind of deeper pain in the future. Particularly when we talk about addictions, and which I've talked about a lot on my little channel here. I want to talk first a bit about pain, and I want to really frame pain as not something to avoid or ignore, but something to harness for the information that it communicates. Pain is really, it's one of nature's primordial teachers amongst all of, life. As life sort of engages with its environment, pain is really what tells us to avoid certain things that are toxic and bad for us. And so in that sense, it really does convey very important survival value, and there's a kind of deep necessity to it. And pain is something that, when it arises, it's something that grips your attention and pulls your attention in. And the reason why it grabs your attention is because it wants you to change your action. It wants you to change your behavior, because your current behavior is leading you astray. It's leading you into an environment, a situation that is not conducive to flourishing. And, if we bury pain, if we ignore it, we're not allowing our being to really harness all the important lessons of life. And that is why, we should really integrate these sort of negative feelings. We should look at them for what they are. We often, like I said, we often have a tendency to repress, to ignore, particularly, negative emotional states. And we holistically and reductionistically view these sort of negative emotional states of pain and, parallels of pain, depression, anxiety as a all-encompassing negative thing. But it's not negative. It evolved in us for a reason. It evolved in us for the purpose of changing our behavior towards more better directions. Like depression, when it arises within us, which is a kind of deep psychological pain. It's a deep psychological pain because it's a state where our mind is sort of painted with this darkened hue, and we have this sort of, this depression lens, which, sort of drains life of all of its joy and motivation and pleasure, and we feel like a kind of ghost almost. Depression, when it sort of arises, it's a deep longing within yourself that the current situation is not right, it's not nourishing. And it will, in our sort of modern environment, people will tend to numb such feelings with antidepressants, and there's a whole medical and psychiatry industry which surrounds, the marketing and selling of these products, because they don't really solve that deep existential reaction that we have within our souls. it masks over the symptoms and enables you to go back to your work, to continue to persist in a sort of an inhumane situation without the with a kind of plastering over that sort of deep longing. It sort of disconnects you from that feeling, and it doesn't motivate you to do the sort of the behaviors and psychological shifts that would address the deep longing within you, which is your emotional center sort of communicating to you that this situation is wrong. um you know these sort of short-term plastering over medications, they are just ways of providing a sort of superficial psychological band-aid on deeper emotional issues. And you know part of psychological integration, this journey of understanding ourselves and moving towards a state of healing and wholeness, it requires the integration of all the aspects of our mind, even the negative. And and the integration is is not it's not just to look at the negative things, the negative emotions, and the negative feelings. It's not just to look at them. There's always the objective of understanding them, and through that understanding, moving towards integrating them and healing yourself and moving your psychological experience to a state of more peace, more tranquility, more pleasurable emotional states. And if we just ignore these sort of negative feelings, we're ignoring the information they convey, and we're not allowing us to orient our being in a more flourishing direction. We're ignoring the lessons that they grant us. And if we think about, what is it like to move your being, your psychology, to a domain of more pleasure, of higher vibration, of more enjoyment and bliss. A lot of this movement is a product of what we have a tendency to put our mind to, what our attention orients to fundamentally. Much of our reality is what we pay attention to. And if we are constantly ruminating our attention upon all the bad, of all the fear in this world, or the fear that we feel, then our entire reality will become that fear. Conversely, if our attention is instead oriented to this innate curiosity, this innate gratitude for existence, for all the things that one is excited to do, for all the curiosities, the mysteries that life affords us to explore, then that domain of experience will become amplified in your mind. So really, and I talk about this so much on the regarding the primacy of our attention, the primacy and the foundational aspect of what we orient our mind to. Because what we orient our mind to through the medium of attention is what we amplify in our reality. It's what we give greater clarity and significance to. So in order to move towards healing, in order to move towards more positive mental states, you need to become more aware of how you are directing your consciousness, of how you're directing your attention, and what you are giving reality to. The only way to move your attention from negative states to positive states is to give greater reality to the positive, to give greater gratitude. Because gratitude is the antithesis of, depression and nihilism. But I think I'll leave that at that. I hope that's been interesting. Enjoy the rest of your day. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Anyways.